Welcome to the online session of the Department of Management Studies, Merimada College, Alakkod. Today I am going to explain about the topic stress management. As we all know, stress is a very common word. So, what do you mean by stress? Stress is the body's reaction to any change that requires an adjustment or response. The body reacts to those changes with physical, mental and emotional responses. So, stress is a normal part of our life. And now we are going to explain about stress management. What do you mean by stress management? So, stress management is a wide spectrum of techniques and psychotherapies aimed at controlling a person's level of stress, especially chronic stress. So, today two terms we have studied. One is stress and another one is stress management. Now I am going to explain about the types of stress. There are mainly 7 types of stress, and we are going to explain the first type of stress, which is known as mental stress. So, let us see what is mental stress. So, as we all know, a person who is mentally stressed cannot think properly and is not able to gain concentration. So, mental stress is the very basic of all symptoms and indicators of stress. So, the first type of stress is mental stress. A person's thinking is also affected by the mental stress. A person who is under the mental stress is not able to think properly. So, the second type of stress is emotional stress. So, we will see what is emotional stress. So, emotional stress is a product of mental pressure and tension. So, it's a combination of tension and pressure. It affects the concentration of a person. So, as we have seen that first type, mental stress, that is also, in that case, it affects the concentration of the person. Very similar, here also emotional stress affect the concentration of the person. So, both of these stress can make a negative impact on human being. So, the third one is called physical stress. So, here we can see the mental and emotional symptoms directly affect the physical aspect of the person. So, the physical stress relates to the physical reaction or response of the body to the cause of stress and other symptoms. So, the third type of stress is, which is called physical stress. So, what do you mean by physical stress? It is mental and emotional symptoms directly affect the physical aspect of the person. So, a person who is under mental and emotional stress, automatically he will be affected by the physical stress also. So the different body symptoms and functions, particularly the nervous system and the cardiovascular functions, are affected by the physical stress. So physical stress will affect the health of the person, and which will make a person ill or unhealth, mainly by it will affect the nervous system of the human and cardiovascular functions. That means which is related to heart functions. Then another symptom is breathing difficulties. A person who is under physical stress, he can affect some kind of breathing difficulties, such as shortness of breath, like that. So this physical stress is also cause negative impact on human, which will directly affect the health of the human. So here now we have studied mainly three types of stress. First one is mental stress, and the second one is emotional stress, and the third one is physical stress. Now we are going to explain about another type of stress, which is known as eustress. So it can be written as eustress, eustress. It is a type of short-term stress that provides immediate strength to a person. So it is very short-term in nature. Eustress is very short-term in nature. So eustress arises at a point of increased physical activity, enthusiasm, and creativity. So from this term we can understand that eustress is a kind of positive stress. Previously we have discussed three types of stress which are having the negative impact on human, which will directly or indirectly affect the health and emotions, etc. But here a stress is a type of short-term stress, and which is a positive stress. So this is good for a person. So a stress is a positive stress that arises when motivation and inspiration, when a person is get motivated or inspired, then automatically a stress will come to act. So a stress is a kind of positive stress. So this is very useful, especially in the case of athletes, performers, like that. So an athlete experiences a stress before a competition. So before the competition, the athlete will definitely be getting a kind of tension, pressure, like that. So that kind of stress or pressure is known as a stress. So it is very helpful. It's a kind of helpful stress. So this is the fourth type of stress, which is known as eustress. And now we are going to explain about the fifth kind of or fifth type of stress, which is known as distress. So distress is a kind of negative stress which brought about by the constant readjustment or alterations in a routine. So if any changes or alterations takes place in your routine works, routine activity, then this distress will arise. So this is a kind of negative stress. So distress creates a feeling of discomfort and unfamiliarity. So somebody will feel some kind of discomfort during this distress when he is readjusted or alterations which will happen to his daily or routine works. So distress is a kind of negative stress. Actually, this distress can be classified into two types. There are two types of distress. One is known as acute stress and another one is chronic stress. As far as acute stress is concerned, it is an intense stress that arises and disappears quickly. That is the speciality of this acute stress. That is very short term or very short period that will arise and that will disappear very quickly. So this kind of distress or stress is known as acute stress, which is in very short period. And the second type of distress is the chronic stress. So actually chronic stress will stand a prolonged time. That is the main difference between acute stress and chronic stress. Both are coming under the category of distress. So there are two types of distress. First one is acute stress, which is intense stress and that arrives and disappears very quickly. And the second one is chronic stress, which is a prolonged stress that exists for weeks or months or even years. So it will last for a long time. That is the main difference between acute and chronic stress. For example, one who is constantly changing his job may experience distress. A person who is changing his job regularly or very frequently, definitely that person will experience a kind of distress. So this is the fifth kind of stress, which is known as distress, and distress can be classified into two types. One is acute stress and the second one is chronic stress. So now we will see what is the sixth kind of stress, which is known as hyperstress. That hyperstress occurs when an individual is pushed beyond what he or she can handle. That means if somebody is overloaded with work or overworked, automatically he will affect the hyperstress. So hyperstress is the sixth type of stress, which occurs when an individual is pushed beyond what he or she can handle. Hyperstress results from being overloaded or overworked. So hyperstress can be avoided by scheduling the work properly and avoiding the overload like that. So, and the seventh last type of stress is hypostress. Sixth one is hyper and the seventh one is hypo. This hypo stress is just opposite to the hyper stress. So we can understand that hyper stress is happening due to overload, and here the hypo stress which occurs when an individual is bored or unchallenged, when he feels that he is not a challenging personality, or he is not useful, or he is not able to do that work. In such situation he will get bored, and then hypostress arises. So hypostress is just opposite to hyperstress, and hypostress occurs when an individual is bored or unchallenged. For example, a factory worker who performs repetitive tasks might experience hypotension. A person who is doing similar job, similar work routine, repetitively doing same work, he might have feel this hypotension, because there is no challenging job or no opportunity to change. In such a case, this factory worker may affect hypostress. So these are the main types of stress. I will repeat once again. So the types of stress: first one is mental stress, and the second one is emotional stress, third one is physical stress, fourth one is stress, and fifth one is distress. And distress can be again classified into two types. One is acute stress and another one is chronic stress. And the sixth type of stress is hyper stress, and the last one is, that means the seventh one, is hypo stress.